Now we're going to move on to hear from Nikita Solberg, who's the DE&I Advocate at Hibob. A defining quality of Nikita's personality is certainly the continued curiosity to learn and improve, which has contributed to their success in both their career and education. Hi Nikita, thank you for joining us. And how are you today?
Doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Over to you.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending today. Definitely been some incredible guests and incredible presentations. So as far as my presentation today, moving beyond diversity to cultures of inclusivity and belonging. So in today's webinar, we will cover some key points, such as why DEI and B must go beyond a hashtag and purely initiatives, why leveraging technology can help you spend less time on administrative tasks and more time on these initiatives, and what are some specific challenges that companies are facing in this space today. So while I had a lovely introduction, just a little bit more about me. This picture comes from the beautiful country of Georgia that I had the pleasure of working at during the summer through my company's own remote working scheme. I'm currently working in our New York City office on the sales team, but I've recently really found my voice through challenging companies to provide inclusive environments. So my first taste with this actually came from my last career in classical music, where I was mentioning to a colleague how being a non-binary professional, it can be very challenging to feel included in dress codes, right? There's only two genders in classical music, tux wearers and all black wearers. So it was very interesting and telling to hear from his point of view, where he said, I never thought about it that way. And so that really drove me to bring a focus on ways that companies can help include all individuals, not necessarily only the ones that they're focusing on this year. So before we dive in, I did want to take a moment to tell you about Bob, the company I work for. So Bob is a modern, forward-thinking people management platform. It's a unique system of engagement designed to meet unique needs. Our clients typically appreciate our flexibility and approach, especially when fast-growing and multinational. Bob pairs powerful software with delightful features that do allow its users to automate and scale HR processes. We help connect teams to assist businesses and employees grow faster and stronger, no matter where they are located in the world, say Georgia. Our global team serves a couple thousand customers across more than 100 countries and collectively over 100,000 employees around the world. And we truly feel fortunate to help drive and support other companies' employee happiness by delivering the support of our own diverse workforce. As remote and hybrid work become a normal way of operation, I think we've all learned that the way we've worked has really changed over the last couple of years. HR is in a fortunate position to strategically lead their businesses to adapt and thrive. So through guiding and empowering managers to lead their teams, driving communication and engagement initiatives that build strong culture, and coming to the table with strong analytical people insights, HR leaders can directly impact the success of the business that they support and solidify their standing as a strategic driver of business performance. So this is the same slides that we would show prospective clients, really just showcasing how HR has a lot of fingers and a lot of different pies. So if you're at this event, you've likely heard variations on these letters. So I don't want to put another definition on the page. However, the incredible inclusion of the B, or belonging, has truly resonated with me. So again, D&I, DE&I, DEI, and B. What are we even talking about at this point? So belonging refers to an individual's actual sense of acceptance. It may feel like a subtle difference, but it really does matter. Simply having a diverse workforce shouldn't be the goal ultimately, because if your employees don't feel represented and included, they will leave for a company where they do. So this was an incredible quote that I love, is just organizations can no longer just add women and stir. We have to now understand that propelling these initiatives can not only start with hiring diverse talent, but must continue on to sustain that diverse talent. So what are some top challenges that are holding fast-growing companies back? I want to walk through a couple of ways to start looking beyond that hiring to ensure that your people feel accepted and that they belong at your company from day one. So at the beginning of the employee life cycle, hiring and recruitment. For point one, you can start by creating a culture of belonging all the way from the language you do use in your job description. This language should be neutral and inclusive, especially in tech, where job descriptions can tend to use more aggressive language, things like hunter and rock star. You should be sure that you're not turning off people from applying with your language. On top of that, it's super important that you train hiring managers on their own unconscious bias, because let's be honest, we do all have one. If you feel confident that you can hire someone in 60 seconds, you are likely contributing to the issue of hiring on basis and stereotypes. We do know, as many studies have shown, that the diversity of thought drives innovation and productivity. So ensuring that your hiring managers are open to others who may not be so cookie cutter duplicates of their other employees is critical. For me, it was someone taking the chance on the skills that I learned in concert halls, bars, and cafes, and that they could be applicable in a tech setting. For point three, when it comes to hiring and recruiting, I think now is an amazing time for organizations to take advantage of remote work. Remote hiring allows HR leaders to recruit employees from a much larger range of backgrounds, circumstances, and geographical locations. Again, further promoting that diversity. HR leaders can use this opportunity to hire employees who may not otherwise be able to work, especially at that setting. Once you do bring in these diverse hires, you need to make sure that they feel included and do want to stay. You can do that by prioritizing diversity and inclusion. You can invest as needed in building support systems for members of underrepresented groups and creating clubs and programming that support values at all levels. At Bob, for example, myself and another colleague were given the platform to share about reprogramming, about non-binary inclusion, which was then highly encouraged to present as a workshop to each and every department in the company. So I can finally tell you that I can now remember how many syllables are in inclusivity. So not only was it an opportunity to talk about something deeply personal to ourselves, it also showed the company that this is an important topic that connects deeply to our values. It was employee-led, but company supported and company-wide. These workshops actually grew out of our cultural safety committee, a group of bobbers from all around our offices with all different backgrounds that do work side by side with our HR team to lead initiatives around inclusion and belonging. This leads me to my next point, building a culture. So this culture committee should work together on projects like a code of conduct, cultural programming, employee education, and management training. When building a committee like this, open it to all employees who want to join. And remember, the more people that join, the more voices and a more significant impact. Not only does this give people a voice and some say in what happens in your organization, it also gives you a place to recognize these employees for all of their hard work and for making an impact on your culture. We as an HR tech company are certainly finding more and more that validation and recognition at work is what is driving people to stay in their jobs for longer, not necessarily only a paycheck or only the benefits, but how does someone feel recognized at work? So ultimately, that recognition drives inclusivity. When managers or other team members take the time to recognize their accomplishments, both privately and publicly, employees feel valued and understand that their contribution to the company has an impact. We do this at Bob on our own platform, of course, but it can be done in your communication and collaboration tools like Slack or Teams. If you start encouraging members to post in a Slack channel, for example, others, of course, will want to jump on board and create a culture of recognition. This is something that's especially critical during remote and hybrid work, where people can feel disconnected from their colleagues and that their work is perhaps overlooked or not as appreciated. So this could also be paired, as in point 4, with surveys, understanding that the more ways that employees can offer their opinions, the more ways that they can feel like their voices are heard. And along that 5th point, picking modern tech to support modern needs and inclusivity. So this is not a sales call, I promise you, but just to show a quick screen grab of our very own platform, Hibob. I do want to share the fact that we do empower employees to express themselves by allowing them to accurately identify their gender identity, their sex, as well as sharing their pronouns directly from their profile. So these are basically custom fields that you can fill out however you wish. I do know that a lot of people are now putting their pronouns in other languages, and that's a fantastic drive to, again, recognize the importance that pronouns have when presenting online. Many companies still have no means for reporting beyond M and F, nor ways for employees to express their pronouns in a public way, aside from adding it as a part of their name on various accounts, as my Zoom name, Nikita, they, them. Furthermore, without dedicated outlets, apathy towards gender representation can reflect transphobic tendencies. Individuals can be hesitant to share if they believe to potentially experience backlash despite whatever legal protections are offered. Employees can be cautious to speak up and less likely to take chances if they don't feel welcome, leading to less engagement. Again, the reason why we're all here today. Allowing for self-reported identification allows for representation to start and continue on from hiring. So as far as one of the workshops that I presented at Hibob, this was one of the titular sides where it was a quote where it really showcases that, I'm sure you've all read it by now. I tend to always read slides before the speaker can get them out. But just understanding that changing your habits is not one big decision. It requires constant and consistent evaluation to ensure that you are always moving towards improving your initiatives, improving how you are recognizing and representing your employees in the workplace. Finally, I want to highlight the importance of building strong employee-manager relationships. HR teams can promote a sense of belonging for employees by guiding managers to establish trusting relationships with their employees. This starts with respectful communication and dialogue, which HR leaders can support by providing coaching and training for building meaningful, positive, and strong bonds with employees. Again, in remote work, this is especially critical because employees are likely speaking with their own managers the most, maybe not even their direct colleagues. And if they don't feel comfortable talking to their manager, they likely won't feel like they belong. Ultimately, inclusion and belonging must be an integral part of your culture and simply not a nice to have. Training is not enough. Attending different workshops is not enough. You have to commit to creating an environment where everyone feels welcome, and you have to practice it on a daily basis. It's going to be up to you and your employees to lead these initiatives and take ownership of maintaining a culture where everyone feels like they belong. And that concludes my presentation.
Nikita, thank you. It's so clear that Bob has managed to create a culture where you feel you belong, but clearly other people do as well. And clearly a lot goes on to form that culture. Is there one particular thing that you can put a finger on that you think helps create that sense of belonging, or is it really a combination of everything that goes on and the thought that's gone into it?
I would definitely say a combination, but first off would definitely be the transparency of representation.
Yeah.
So when I started at Hibob, it was incredible to have just tech backing up the fact that I can present my pronouns
Yeah.
in a public way.
Yep, so that sort of immediate recognition and the ability to do it easily. Yeah, now, you gave a definition of belonging as a sense of acceptance, which really resonated with me, and that's very much that, isn't it? Being able to do it without having to ask specially to have an arrangement made, but the facility just being there is about feeling that sense of acceptance.
Exactly. And I think that there obviously are many, many ways to encourage that. But when you have the data backing up that you are hiring diversely, that you have ways and say committees or clubs, when I see other organizations where clearly on their career pages, they'll have different sorts of clubs or organizations that individuals can join. That is always a great sign and lets me know that that company has its head in the right space.
Yeah. What are some of the other ways that companies can offer an open and communicative environment like that?
I would say just that public recognition is a fantastic way to do that. So if you don't have a system in place already, just creating public channels where you can celebrate wins and really include employees. So again, letting employees know that their contributions matter
Yeah.
and that they are having an effect day to day is helping employees feel like they are valued at the company. So it might just be a Slack channel that says, congratulations on doing this today, or it could even be congratulations on your wedding. Understanding that an employee is more than simply just their job title and their 9 to 5.
Absolutely. I'm sure there must have been challenges along the route for Bob to get to where it is now. What have some of those challenges been in terms of implementing such a culture of belonging and celebrating diversity?
Of course, I would say time zones. I would say that's probably our biggest challenge as an international company, understanding that different sites have different priorities, have different access to ways that they can promote that belonging.
Yeah.
But really getting that clear communication on the board and having ways to understand what the workforce looks like. So for an example, it can be very challenging to include parents into workplace functions because they might not want to give up their evenings. Or if someone doesn't drink, they might not feel included if you are only giving events centered around alcohol. So really promoting a diverse sort of events, different ones that allocate to different and cater to different interests is a sure way to support your workforce.
Absolutely. We've the small company that I run. We've recently come back to doing face-to-face events with our network. So we represent social enterprises in the Midlands in the UK, and we realised that our previous events really were excluding parents, particularly because we were always doing breakfast meetings, and that's what the networking events were. And you suddenly realise that that's excluding all of those people who really can't do breakfast meetings, but also what it said about our view of the value of that network meeting was that it actually got to be in addition or outside of the working day, and not actually, this is a really valuable thing for you to do as part of your working life. And so we've moved them now to being brunch socials, which makes it accessible for so many more people, and I think places it better in terms of how we see their value as well. But yeah, it was a real eye-opener to suddenly realise that we were just casually excluding a whole chunk of people. And it's thought-provoking when you suddenly realise that that's what you're doing unconsciously. You know, nobody will have thought, right, we don't want parents at that, but just that unconscious assumption that that's how we do things. For you personally, what are some of the ways that you felt supported as a non-binary individual at work?
I would say the fact that in no way have I ever felt any sort of discrimination in regards to that. Of course, applying, you can feel sort of just like you are only what's on your resume. So understanding that in the recruitment stages, there are ways for that bias to creep in between names or public web presence, but understanding that I've posted work online, I'm very clearly in this space and very much an advocate for promoting better representation of non-binary individuals in the workplace, and did not for one second feel like that was negatively attributed to what I could offer to the team.
Excellent. And what are some of the ways that you feel that you can celebrate your diversity at work?
Yes. So one of the highlights of our platform, again, not to always be bringing it back to it, but being able to showcase your hobbies. You have a public platform. You can say what your hobbies are, and that was, I think, the first time I'd ever been asked in a work setting, who are you beyond your job position, right? So people can put in sports, people can put in, they like music. So being able to include those hobbies and interests when planning events or planning communities. So say we have a group that rock climbs together in our New York office, because at the click of the button, you can go in and see who's in New York, who likes rock climbing. Great, let's set up something so that we can all get together and really have a good time outside of the workday.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that really touches an important engagement principle for me, which is the ability to bring the whole of ourselves to work, whatever that is. And I always say in my case, I'm a Morris dancer, which UK people will just raise their eyebrows at and go, what? And I'm a huge Star Trek fan, and I will spend half of the year dyeing my hair green and pink and everything else. But all of that is me. And if I'm not able to bring that stuff, if I don't feel that that stuff is welcome, then my employer gets much less of me, and I am far less effective than I might be otherwise. And it can be quite exhausting sometimes to have to be the advocate for that being accepted. So you can be in a workplace where it's perhaps tolerant, but it's not celebratory. Does that make sense?
That certainly makes sense, and I think that's why the inclusion of belonging to DEI and B is such an imperative point that hopefully my presentation came across, because you can have all of that. You can have the diversity, you can have the inclusivity, you can have the equity, but really having that sense of, can I be my true and authentic self in a workplace setting in an appropriate way? And not feel like there's any stigma or bullying that could occur, and that there are rules in place to ensure that people have the support, if there was a case, that they could report it or have otherwise way of showcasing, maybe what are some wrong things happening at the company.
So does the culture at Bob allow for challenge if you see that behaviour? So is it safe enough for you to feel that you could challenge it either for yourself or on behalf of a colleague?
Yes, for sure. You know, enacting, I know in the EU, it's now mandatory for companies to have ways for anonymous reporting. Being able to have that is definitely powerful to be able to show that, as well as, like I was saying, those direct relationships between the employees and the managers are so important because sometimes it might be an issue that can be concluded with a manager versus going up the chain
Yeah.
of the HR. So having different outlets of that support is something what I certainly feel we do have at Hibob.
Yeah. And just to finish us off, if you could give us the one thing that either you think that Bob does well or that we can do as individuals within our organisations to help foster that sense of belonging, what would the one thing be?
I would say listening,
Yeah.
right? So it's one thing for someone to have all this pent up inside them, but might not necessarily feel comfortable, or that you haven't produced an environment that they could share. So really administering that sense of listening no matter
Yeah.
what is what I think is that first step that companies should put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And in fact, it's where I started my introduction today, was saying that we have to be open to listening to the stories of people that feel excluded for whatever reason that is. Because until we do that, we can't make change. We're just making assumptions. That's completely that. Nikita, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Same to you. Thank you very much for having me.